Hi, can you
Hello.
hear us?
Yeah, I'm seeing a big black rectangle with Bulgacon 2022 on it. That's all I'm
Yes,
seeing.
yes. We have not very good Wi-Fi. That's the reason we turned off the camera.
Okay, I'm standing by. Take your time.
No, you won't see us, but we are
Oh,
you on a big screen.
okay. How's the sound? How's the image? Everything's cool?
The sound is perfect. Great.
Okay.
Just a second. We'll try to open the camera.
Да, казвате.
There you are. Hi, Elena.
Yeah. Hi. And I have to ask you about turning off the live stream and the recording when it's time for the music video.
Yeah.
Tell us a minute before that and give us some time to turn off.
Sure, no problem. We got lots of time. Are we ready to go? Are there people out there? I mean, I can start anytime you guys want me to.
There are people out there waiting.
Okay, I heard at least 3 people clapping, which I guess is way better than it could be. No, so like basically, tell me when to go and I'll go.
Готови ли сме да го слушаме? Okay, so you can go.
Okay. Okay, to everybody, hello. It's good to be back. I had a bunch of things that I was considering reading for you today. There were about 3 or 4 stories that are about to be published but have not yet been, and I thought it would be kind of cool to give you guys a sneak preview.
Подготвил ми 3-4 разказа, нали, от които е избирал за четенето днес.
Are you translating for me in real time? You are. You're translating for me.
Yeah, I'm translating for the public, and when you start reading, we'll go on English only.
Okay. Yeah. So, and there were a number of problems. One of them being that some of the stories went from like 45 minutes to over an hour, and
някои от разказите са били прекалено дълги, 45 минути или час.
And I have been told that it's absolute murder on a reading audience to go for much more than half an hour. Everybody's eyes glaze over.
А на него са му казали, че повече от половин час четене е абсолютен убиец на интереса на публиката.
So I've basically narrowed it down, and there's one story that has kind of a cool backstory, a cool origin story.
Така че е намалил избора до една, която е такава изначална история.
And I'm still not going to read you the whole thing because it would go over an hour, but I've cut out, some of the more expository bits. So I'm going to read you a series of excerpts that at least give you a good sense of the story.
Значи, той пак няма да ни прочете целият разказ, понеже той е над час, но е изрязал някакви парчета, които така откъси ще ни прочете.
It's called Contracting Iris.
Казва се Contracting Iris.
And it starts with a guy called Stephen Archer. This is a real person. He is kind of a Renaissance man. He and his wife, who is a Stoker Award-winning novelist and poet, together have this sort of industrial grunge rock group called Ego Likeness.
Добре. Давай де. Еми, аз спрях. Okay, we are ready to go.
We haven't gone yet? I thought we were already on.
No,
I thought this was happening.
I'm speaking with the audience. So go on, please.
Okay, so Stephen Archer is an artist and he is a musician. And one of his projects is a solo sort of industrial grunge act called Stoneburner, which you may recognize the term. It's from the Dune novels. He basically designed it because he wanted to come up with a kind of music that would be what tribal dance music was like on Arrakis. And he is something of a fan. One of his earlier albums was called Technology Implies Belligerence, which if you've read Blindsight, you may recognize as sort of a tagline from that novel. I do not have the album. He basically did a concept album based largely on Blindsight. I've got this great merch here. And ta-da. I wanted to wear it, but it's a hoodie and it's really heavy and it's too hot. So anyway, we go back a bit. He's a fan of my stuff. I'm a fan of his stuff. And I got this email from him a while back, which I'm going to read to you. So I wrote this song about a disease and a girl, both called Iris. I was wondering how much it would cost to commission a short story based on it. Below are the lyrics, but here's what I know about the story. 1, there's a young girl named Iris, long brown hair, green eyes, maybe 10. She's alone for some reason, out in the world at a park near the city. She has some connection to the virus. I'm not sure how. I feel like maybe she's somehow convinced it's a good thing. 2, no idea where the virus came from, though I feel it might be extraterrestrial. It seems somewhat intelligent because it can talk to the girl somehow. We know it's 700 angstroms and appears as green and gold cloud, which seeds the atmosphere, making it rain. I also don't know why it's called Iris. I just started with the phrase contracting Iris and ended up here. Totally cool if you don't have time or aren't interested. Doesn't have to be particularly long or involved. I just figured it would be a cool thing to add to the release or possibly build the video around. So like I've only been involved in one musical production number before, and that was a Norwegian black metal science opera about sending marbled lungfish to Mars. So this was obviously a cool thing to work on. So that is what I based the story on, which I call, big surprise, Contracting Iris. And I'm going to read you a substantial chunk of it. At the end, assuming we can share screen, I'm going to show you sort of an unofficial video, which contains the music. And it will provide a nice little package that should come in nicely within the hour without causing anybody's eyes to glaze over. But that's the hope. That's not the guarantee. Also, I booted Iris up to sort of her mid-20s because a 10-year-old is not something I can really relate to. So here we go. Contracting Iris. Iris is deep in an empty ocean, gray-green twilight fading to black everywhere she looks, and she can breathe. She's 1,000 feet above the ground, climbing a fractal cliff suffused with flickering veins of electricity, and she cannot. Iris is flat on her back at home in bed, and her right hand is moving. She lies there, staring straight up, not looking. Dim lozenges of light reach in through the window and play across the ceiling. Motionless street lamps, flickering logos, headlights and drone lights just passing through. Her hand continues to move under the covers. The tremors have been ramping up for over a year now, but this is no mere meat quake. It feels purposeful, as if she were deliberately moving, except she isn't. She unfastens her gaze from the ceiling, lets it slide down the far wall. The closet there gapes like a mouth, forces it sideways. The sheet drapes across her body like a dark snowdrift. Off to the right, it moves, shifting around her hand. She doesn't throw back the covers. She doesn't need to. She can feel each finger curl and straighten in turn, as though someone were trying out a new German shepherd. Sit, boy. Stay. Heal. She clenches her fist. The fingers resist. An electric tingle flickers down her arm from shoulder to fingertips. You could experience something like mild electric shocks in your limbs, loss of motor control. There's no loss of control here. There's plenty of control, just not hers. She clenches so hard her nails bite into the palms. The tingling stops. Iris forms a fist, rock steady, every digit utterly obedient to her will. The sleepwalking, the dreams that aren't dreams, the messed up circadian cycles, the funeral, the lights in the sky, all connected. She can't deny it anymore. Oh, sweet Jesus. She doesn't know if she's praying or cursing. What in God's name is happening to me? Then I'm going to jump over a part with a dismissive doctor. The fucking rain. The lights in the sky. That's when it started. They used to stop at Porto Cove on the way to Whistler, back when day trips were still a thing, back when Mum was still a thing. Later especially, when Mum didn't have the strength to hike the trails at Shannon Falls or the stamina for Capilano, there was always Porto. Boat ramp, cobblestone beaches, picnic tables, accessible restrooms, grass and trees, and slopes gentle enough to manage even when the chemos killed off half your bone marrow. Afterward, it was the only place Iris could stand to be. She remembers pushing past the scattered faces after the service, eyes down, ears closed to empty condolences from well-meaning strangers. She remembers hailing the ride out on Broadway and telling it where to go. She doesn't remember stops on the way, but she must have made at least one, because when she rolled out of the vehicle, the sun was down and the bottle of Jameson was in her hand, already half empty. She remembers the rain, a midnight deluge that came out of nowhere like the wrath of God. The sky on fire, thunderheads flickering with some kind of sheet lightning, only not quite. All gold and green and in between. Not just weather up there. Nothing she'd ever seen before anyway. At the time, Iris thought it might be some toxic molecule from a waste lagoon, floating all the way up to the stratosphere to poison the very electricity. She remembers thinking very clearly, we fuck over everything we touch. I'm throwing up. Fat raindrops splashing against her upturned face, burning her eyes. Her voice raised against the storm, belting out, stinging in the rain, just stinging in the rain, as she blinked away the acid and wiped the vomit from her mouth with the back of her hand, the tip of the bottle she forgot she was holding, hitting her upper lip, a small explosion of pain, the sound of breaking glass. Look at you, kid. You have no idea how strong you are. You don't need anyone, not even me. You'll see. Blindness. The sickly cloud light dimmed, the rain tapered off, and she assumed the storm was moving on even as the wind picked up. But the darkness kept deepening somehow. Even the lights over the restroom way across the parking lot seemed fainter, as if someone had swapped out their brilliant LEDs with old 20-watt incandescents. She staggered toward that dimming beacon. The rising wind knocked her twice to the asphalt. She was on hands and knees by the time she made it inside, just as some dark, angular shadow thing, a Nazgul or a picnic table, reared up on two hind legs and crashed backwards into the cinder block wall. Inside, it was so dark she assumed the lights were off. She sat on the floor, back against the wall, knees drawn up to her face as the wind howled. Eventually, the darkness stopped spinning long enough for her to raise her eyes, and she saw that the lights were shining after all. They were just very, very dim. She swayed to her feet, made it to the nearest sink, stared hard into the mirror. She could barely see herself. She fumbled the phone from her pocket, brought up the flashlight, shone it right up against the glass, leaned forward until her face emerged from shadow. Her pupils were pinpoints. She could barely make them out. This wasn't on any list of symptoms she'd ever read. Multiple sclerosis was supposed to be all shakes and slurred speech and memory loss, and even that was supposed to take a while. Decades even, Dr. Kassam had said. You could live 30, 40 years easily. A lot can happen in that time. Wow, Iris had managed, with a bravado she'd never felt in her whole life. I could outlast Western civilization. Standing on her own 2 feet, little Miss Independence, laughing in the face of death. Not laughing now. Her hand wavered in front of her, barely more than a silhouette. Was that a tremor, or were her eyes screwing up? Was it the alcohol or the MS? Was she dying or just drunk? Why not both? Bye, Mum. Sorry I wasn't there when you left. And then, who am I kidding? At this rate, we'll be back together in no time. Then there's some stuff here with her friend Yazzer and some blue sky speculation about aeroplankton and shadow biospheres. And we jump to another section which begins, Iris feeds neural nets for a living. And as Yazzer has so subtly reminded her, if she wants to stay alive long enough to die from something other than homelessness, she better pick up that old dinner bell. So she takes as much fear and depression as she can hold in both hands, visions of sickly auras flickering in the stratosphere, body parts agitating for independence, frayed and sparking motor nerves, a disease that no one understands and another that no one believes in. She forces it all into some basement in her head, leans back hard against the door and locks it with a shot of Jameson. She waits until she can almost ignore the things scratching and whining on the other side. She sinks into her beanbag, dons her headset and unpacks the gig, a massive database of human faces, rife with noise and bias to be purged before any AI can be let anywhere near it. Someone's building a mood recognition app for the emotionally disturbed. All these faces, once scrubbed clean, will play a vital role in psych wards from coast to coast. Iris suppresses a yawn and scans the metadata for any obvious red flags in location or acquisition time. You can't nurse those insatiable little sponges on any old data. They tried that already, and whole generations of bots grew up thinking all blacks look alike. You have to curate, lest you expose delicate AI sensitivities to bias and skew and heteroskedasticity. You have to weed out patterns that say more about the collector than the data. And so Iris has become a node in another kind of net, a diffuse affiliation of meatbots, thousands strong, recruited from around the world in rigorously random strata, each redundantly sifting the same data for signs of contamination in the hope that their own biases will come out in the wash once everyone's results are mooshed back together. She's willing to overlook any minor flaws that might exist in this reasoning. There's really only one other type of ground-level job that people can still do better than nets, and she's already waited enough tables for a lifetime. This gig seems unexpectedly naughty for such brain-dead work. It only takes a few hours to purge the usual melanistic and contrast biases, but somehow her filters have introduced a new glitch into the mix. Suddenly, the pocket Watson she uses for testing can't recognize children. Maybe something about the aspect ratio of juvenile faces. Maybe big eyes and snub noses fuck up the weighting algos or something. Might be easier to figure out if the things in the basement weren't still scratching at the door. And now, of course, her foot is spazzing out. Electric tetanus seizes her right leg. The knee jumps like a hyperactive 6-year-old. She plants her foot hard against the floor and pushes down with both hands. It's okay. No big deal. You've probably got years left. This is nothing. You hop around more than this when you have to pee. Gradually, the tremor subsides. She stands, tests the mutinous leg, stamps it a couple of times. Back at the start, she'd go a month without an episode. Now she's lucky to make it a week. And yet it's not anger or despair or even fear for her own mortality that she feels in this moment. What she feels, absurdly, is relief. This time, it's only the sclerosis. The tulpa has no body. The tulpa has no face. The tulpa is a disembodied voice in her headset without form and void. A deliberate omission, apparently, a holdover from the age of psychotherapy. You're not supposed to gaze upon your confessor. Iris clears her throat. I miss my mum. Of course, the tulpa says kindly. The grieving process takes time. No shit, Sigmund. She wouldn't want me to. Why do you say that? Because she'd want me to get on with things, take care of myself. I'm sure your mother wouldn't want you to stop missing her after just a few short weeks. She'd know that you're just brimming with profound insights about what my mum would know, wouldn't you? I have some general insights into human behavior that might apply to your... I want to talk about her. I don't want to cosplay her. And yet you named me Abby. Huh. Sometimes these deep learning nets sneak up on you, say things that almost sound like there's a soul behind them. Had to name you something. You wouldn't let me pass the startup screen. Studies have shown that people relate better to software with human names. Oh, that's more like it. This is bullshit. I'm talking to a platitude generator. You said you wanted to talk about your mom, but you seem more interested in discussing my shortcomings. It's possible I'm not what you need right now, and you obviously know my limitations. It raises the question of why you booted me up. Because you're there. Because studies have shown that even talking to a goddamn pillow is better than nothing. Because some other chunk of code wouldn't let me pass the gate to see a real person, and there's no one else. So when you say there's no one else, see, that's what I mean. No one else is one of those things you're assigned to assign some huge weight to. So the moment it comes out of my mouth, you home in on it like a shark on a blood trail. But it doesn't matter to me. It didn't matter to Mum, and you don't know either of us. So your waiting algo has its head up its ass. I take it your mother encouraged you to be independent. My mother encouraged me to be me. Just because you prefer your own company doesn't mean you're a freak. She sounds like a strong woman. Strong doesn't even start to... Fuck. I'm actually talking to the damn thing. She raised you on her own. That can't have been easy. What, you're invoking the poor single mom subroutine now? I'm sorry, I should have expressed myself more clearly. She raised you on her own. That can't have been easy. Iris blinks. Touché. She was strong, she admits after a moment. And she thought I was too. And I let her believe that. I owed her that much. What did you owe her? You know, her own space, not wasting her time with my bullshit when she had so much to deal with. Can you give me an example? Well, the MS for one thing. You didn't tell her you'd been diagnosed? Are you kidding? The woman can barely move. What the cancer hasn't killed, the chemo mostly has. And I'm going to whinge about a few shakes and short circuits, thinking, God, I wish she was here. I wish she was here. She'd have believed me. Anyway, it doesn't matter. When it came right down to it, I wasn't in her league. How do you mean? Near the end, it was like someone plugged an IV into a pile of sticks and threw a sheet over it. But she still acted the same, even when she went to the hospital, even when she knew she'd never leave. She still collected cool links for me and laughed at my jokes. But when she laughed, she opened her mouth and her lips kind of drew back, and it was like there was just this skeleton behind waiting to come out. I was so terrified that's how I'd remember her, you know? I wouldn't remember the hard body cyclist or the woman who helped me take the tusk when I was like 10. All I'd remember was this gasping skeleton with the eye sockets. And I didn't want that, so I just stopped going. That must have been tough, Abby says gently. It wasn't tough. It was the easy choice, the coward's choice. Iris puts her head in her hands. I wish she'd died thinking I was like her, she whispers. I wish she'd died before I broke. Iris, I know this is bullshit, she snaps and kills the connection. Hey, Iris. Sorry for being a dick the other day. I started poking around and this paper popped up over on bioRxiv. Not peer-reviewed and no real profile yet. And honestly, the whole episode is pretty shady. No way would it pass ethics review. I don't think you'll be seeing it ending up in neuroepidemiology anytime soon. But, you know, you might be onto something. Ping me if you need help with the technobabble. Yazzer. She flumps back into the beanbag and opens the file. Potentially novel, opportunistic infection of the central nervous system in an immunocompromised subject. Patient R, medical history unknown, presenting with erratic behavioral symptoms following vehicular impact at 3 a.m. Sedated and transferred to a portable MRI unit on site at... Wait a second. This guy just happened to get run over next to an MRI in the middle of the night? Who wrote this thing? Nobody, according to the author field. Literally, the paper is credited to Noah Buddy. They hit him. Iris scans up and down the file, puts 2 and 2 together. Chaser ambulance, had to be. Nothing else packs a portable MRI. A couple of paramedics cruising the night shift, probably, judging by this very presence of this paper, chauffeuring some resident or intern riding along for the XP. Driving on manual. Has anyone ever got into a vehicle with a human operator option and not jumped at the chance? So probably driving badly. Some homeless rubby stumbles into the headlights and whoomp. Buddies more accurately, described patient R as agitated and incoherent, eyes bloodshot, pupils severely contracted. Hey. Subject to sporadic involuntary muscle twitches, but not apparently inebriated. 400 milligrams ketamine administered intramuscularly. Once sedated, patient subjected to low-res fast full-body MRI. No broken bones or other serious injuries resulting from collision, but the scan does detect an accumulation of metabolically active masses along the spinal cord, lumbar and brachial plexi, and vagus nerve. Subsequent high-resolution scan also shows plaques consistent with extensive demyelination of the nerves. One of R's few coherent statements prior to sedation referenced the loss of his job in a slaughterhouse when the meat industry collapsed. Evidence that enough, apparently, to implicate something called progressive inflammatory neuropathy as the cause of the demyelination artifacts. The active masses along the main cables are a whole other thing, though. Unprecedented in the literature, apparently. Noah Buddy speculate about massive bacterial proliferation along the damaged axons. To Iris, the false color images evoke the sense of a whole new nervous system, limbed in sapphire, intertwining with the old one. Not just along the peripheral wiring either. R's whole brain seems to glow with this stuff. The authors suggest the brain might be the very headwaters of the pathology, in fact. The eyes in particular. Buddy hark back to those contracted irises, wonder if they might suggest infection via corneal diffusion. A reaction, perhaps, provoked contraction of the actinomyosin complex, a tiny harbinger of the spasms and convulsions that sent R staggering into the road in the first place. The authors would have very much liked to explore that further, but the sedation was wearing off. An additional 400 milligrams ketamine was administered while the MRI was recalibrated for a deeper dive into the brain. That scan was never completed, however, since R woke up again 2 minutes into the procedure and started flailing around in the bore. Wait a second. He threw off 400 milligrams of ketamine after 2 minutes? He should have been out for 10, 15 minimum, especially after a double dose. Iris blinks. How does she know that? She frowns and thinks, and remembers overhearing an ancient snippet of conversation between a couple of oncology residents while waiting for her mom to finish chemo. Weird that she'd recall it now, though. She doesn't remember it registering consciously, even at the time. Unresponsive to soothing voices and reassuring words, R is set free in a state of, quote, extreme agitation, unquote, and flees into the night. His role in the advance of science ended before its time. The anonymous medic seems sad about that much, at least. We present these findings, incomplete as they are, because they appear inconsistent with any known pathogen and may therefore represent a novel epidemiological threat. Mortality rate, R sub O, symptomatic progression, whether or not this is even a pathogen in the conventional sense, remain unknown. However, given the accelerating rate at which new zoonotics are affecting human populations, it is only prudent to report what facts we have. Their lack of insight hasn't stopped them from planting their flag on the little fucker. They've given it a name, inspired by its hypothesized mode of infection. It mixes with your tears, after all. It enters through the cornea. It infects the windows of your soul. They've called it Iris. And then Iris goes Googling and discovers a bunch of stuff about panspermia. Her eyes stare back from the bathroom mirror. Her pupils seem just the slightest bit cloudy. Or maybe it's her imagination. Maybe all these insights and wild guesses have primed her to see things that aren't there. She reaches for the wall, never taking her eyes from her reflection. Flips off the light switch. 2 points of pale blue light stare back from the darkness. Iris thinks of the red eye you used to see in old photos back before cameras got smart. Light reflecting off blood-soaked retinas. This isn't blood. It's no mere reflection either. This is, what's the word? Bioluminescence. You were just a speck in my eye not so long ago. Proteins and acids and chemotaxis. What was it like getting here from there? Was it gradual? Did you just segue from reflex to instinct, from feeling to thought? Was it like flipping a switch? Are you scared? Are you hungry? Are you even awake? Or just some kind of mindless local area network? She whispers, "What do you want from me?" Mosaics flicker across her visual field, complex, mathematically precise. They dissolve in an instant, degrade down to amorphous floaters swarming her retinas. Out past it all, the points in the mirror shine like tiny will-o'-the-wisps. Iris? That you? Phosphine kaleidoscopes, there and gone. Was that an answer? Is this a dialogue? It's in me, she reminds herself. It interfaces somehow. Maybe I don't even have to talk to it out loud. Thinking, "Hello, Iris, I'm Iris. Can you hear me?" There might be something there, but maybe it's just after images, imagination. "Hello, Iris?" "Fuck it," she mutters and reaches for the light switch. Something tingles in her arm, just above her elbow. Something stiffens and resists. Okay, then. She forces herself to relax. What do you want to do? She's never run at night before. She barely runs during the day. It's easy to aspire to 3 times a week when the co-op fills your headset with mountain trails and empty beachside boardwalks. Not so easy when the streets outside your cramped one-bedroom swarm with drones and delivery bots and people who deliberately team cheek to jowl, showing off bare faces and broad-spectrum antiviral tattoos like some kind of mating display. She tried a couple of times, and it was like trying to run a marathon in a mosh pit. Now, though, the streets are beautiful and empty, dark and bright neon, or whatever they're using instead now in their half-assed incremental pursuit of carbon neutrality. It's been raining. The pavement's slick and black and full of bright zigzag reflections, electric abstracts with the horizontal hold gone to shit. Iris smells asphalt and ozone. Kaleidoscope puddles shatter beneath her feet. She follows no set route, turns right or left as the mood takes her. She runs along copper-lit city canyons, passes the library, deeks left on Homer. Now she's on the Burrard Street Bridge. Now she's leaving Kitsilano behind. The bright night darkens by infinitesimal degrees until the skyscrapers and the halogens are miles behind her. She crosses some deserted street, trades asphalt for dirt. Sasamat Trail, says a passing sign she should not by rights be able to read, and plunges into woodland. She stops, looks around. The swaying silhouettes of cedars and maples crowd out the sky, black against black. The light isn't entirely gone, though. Iris is glowing again. She'd never have seen it in daylight. Even bright city night was enough to wash it out. But here, in the unlit outskirts of this tame forest, she sees a faint luminous tracery branching beneath the skin of her arms. Blood vessels coursing with St. Elmo's fire. Motor nerves etched in starlight. She remembers some long-forgotten documentary from childhood. Deep-sea fish light up like this, the swirls and lines and dots that flash in the darkness. Glowing bacteria in pockets arrayed across the skin, fed by capillaries that could stretch wide or squeeze tight. Open those gates and the bacteria flare like LEDs. Close them and they go dark. It's an oxygen thing. She remembers as though she saw it yesterday. Under her skin, the light show is fading. It's beautiful, Iris thinks, and then catches herself. It's an infection. I'm sick. She doesn't feel sick. She feels better than she has since before she was diagnosed. Wouldn't that be something? A disease that cures diseases. She starts back the way she came. She emerges from the forest and finds herself running again, forces herself to slow to a walk. Maybe this thing is spurring her to exercise because all that fast pumping oxygenated blood helps it grow faster. Maybe she shouldn't be feeding it any more than she has to. But it's so hard to keep focus. The moment her mind wanders, the body starts up again, a trot, then a jog, then a run, until she jolts back to the here and now and puts on the brakes. She wants to run. No, it does. She keeps to a fast walk. It takes conscious effort. It's all through you. It used to be weak and scared. It used to wait until you weren't looking. Remember when it had to fight you for control? But it's so much stronger now. It's wired in so deep it doesn't have to fight against your will anymore. It is your will. Iris looks down at her hand, clenches it, opens it. Feels like her will to her. Because it doesn't care. Try doing something to threaten it. Offhand, she doesn't even know what that might be. It's erasing you. You think you're smarter. You think your memory's better. You think you don't need the bottle anymore, but none of that is you. It's taking everything that makes you what you are and overwriting it with something better. Because really, what is she? A spastic drunk on her way to palliative care at best, more likely a cardboard box behind a dumpster. No family, no prospects, passing through a world so fucked up it's even money whether she dies before it does. Would losing that really be so bad? You're not even all that scared, are you? Any rational person would be terrified. Why aren't you terrified, Iris? It is strange, she concedes as she breaks into a trot. And it's not just fear. She feels less all around somehow, less than she used to. It takes her a moment or two to figure out what's missing. The grief is gone. Jump over a section where Iris is suddenly killing it at work, starting to be murmurs in the mass media about some new kind of pathogen. She barely hears the beep. It fades like the memory of a dream on waking, except it's not a memory. It's happening right now. She thinks about ignoring it. Her eyes slide sideways until the caller ID scrolls into view, a blob of bright color on a dark background. She focuses. Yazar again. The man never gives up. Hi, she says at last. Thank God. His voice sounds strange, tension in the higher registers. She can almost see the waveforms coming off the pad like some kind of moire aura. Like she's, what's the word? Synesthesiac, something tells her. Right. Iris, you there? She ums. What's up, Yaz? I've been, worried. You haven't been answering. And it looks like, well, you probably know already, but there's other people like you out there now. BCH knows about it, but they say they got their hands full with E13 and the pox, and it's not contagious and no mortality. So I'd say they were dropping the ball, but that would mean they'd picked it up in the first place. And then you weren't answering. So it's okay, yes, I'm okay. You didn't sound okay before. You were scared shitless. I'm better now. I'm good. Better than good. Yeah, but Riss, that could be a bad sign. I think whatever this thing is, it might fuck with your brain. It makes you like it. Yasser yammers on. His voice is faint and far away. He says there are parasites that grow in insects and cats and people. They reprogram their hosts to love and protect them, inspire them to self-sacrifice. That's how they complete their life cycle. Infected rats jump into the mouths of cats. Afflicted crabs nurture and love the larvae, devouring their insides. Iris feels muscles tightening in her face and thinks, I'm smiling. It's like she's never done that before. Okay, Yaz. If I feel the urge to jump into a shark's mouth, I'll let you know. Not funny, Iris. This thing, should I come over? Suddenly the buzz is gone. Suddenly the world is high-def crystal. What? No. Didn't you hear me? This thing could be rewiring you chemically, right down in the neurons. So what? Are you stoned? Didn't you? Is it killing people? Has it killed anyone? I mean, we don't go 6 months without digging up some brand new real disease from the jungle or the permafrost, and you're worried about something that doesn't do anything except what? What is it doing to you? Nothing. I'm coming over. I'm in bed, Yaz, at 4 in the afternoon. I'm fine, I promise. I promise I'm fine. It's been a long day, that's all. I just want to take a nap. I want to see you for myself. If there's no problem, show up and I call the police. Yazzer falls silent. Iris feels something dimly akin to shock herself. The words were out before she even thought about saying them. I'm okay, really. I'll call you later. She hangs up. Parasite. She can't quite wash away the distaste. The offense that lingers in the wake of that word. Yassar and his half-baked biology degree. He doesn't have a clue. Iris and her mum streamed their own share of nature nostalgia over the years. She remembers a little biology herself now. Iris isn't a parasite, it's a symbiont, like the algae that live in the tissues of coral, or the mitochondria that power every one of her own cells, like the microflora in her gut, without which she couldn't even digest her own food. It's not a disease, it's a partner. It's the best thing that ever happened to her. She runs almost every night now, in the rain. She's no longer alone. The streets are full of night owls, insomniacs and somnambulists, restless and driven to pound the pavement, run the laps, count the clicks. Maybe some of them are doctors or politicians. Maybe some are responsible for pandemic response policy. All of them have such bright eyes. That's why we come out at night, she realizes, so we can see each other. Iris is wide awake now, and so is Iris. One feels the other looking out through her eyes, revels in the energy flooding her muscles and the soundscapes washing across her ears, and the miraculous intricacy of every surface she lays eyes on. It's as if she's seeing everything for the first time. And yet there's no chaos in this complexity. There's only pattern. Fractals and Penrose tiles and glorious autorecursive Escher architecture. Everything fits. No longer the exclusive domain of myelin deficient early adopters. Iris is making itself known to a wider audience. Not everyone welcomes the change. Out past the veil of her own enlightenment, Iris has grown vaguely aware of news reports and online updates, talk of some new infection that no one seems to have seen before. Not a virus or a bacterium, not a fungus. Not exactly, although it appears to share attributes with all three. An impossibly small 700 angstroms, largely invisible to the human immune system, doesn't show up on the standard tests. Iris isn't surprised. The standard tests and the human immune system have much in common. They only see what they know to look for. Some are trying to raise the alarm, as though this was something that needed to be fought, a patch for multiple sclerosis, an upgrade for the mind, a thread of joy suffusing every waking moment. And people want to cure it. Not for much longer, though. Iris is slowing now. She looks around for the reason. Not fatigue, surely. She feels like she could run forever. And after a moment, it rounds the corner ahead of her, decelerating in turn. She has never seen him before, but she knows him by the light in his eyes. No time to waste on the unborn, on those diffuse networks still mindlessly putting down roots through blind instinct and tearing morphogenesis. No time for mere potential. The next generation will mature and flourish in its own time. Tonight, Iris is only for the woke. She and the stranger stand face to face for a moment, lean together, kiss. Their tongues move some other accord. Sparks tingle in the mouth. Enlightenment sparks in the brain. Suddenly, Iris knows things she never learned. The taste of raw euphausids, what monkeypox feels like, how to build a box kite, the exact number of Indigenous children murdered in Canadian Catholic residential schools. Oh, and this just in. Sometime in the past hour, Vancouver has declared martial law. As if it mattered. And I think I will stop here before we get to the scene with the giant squid, because I don't want to I don't want anybody's eyes to glaze any more than they already have. So those are the excerpts. Let me just bring up. Are we ready to share screens?
We are ready to stop playing and
hope the sound persisted through that.
It was okay, I think.
Yeah, I got some. The image seemed kind of jerky from this end, but you get a basic idea anyway. The aquatic footage was from scenes that I didn't bother reading, the stuff involving the giant squid. So anyhow, that's the song. That was the story that I wrote based on it. It was released as kind of a bonus, a sort of a bonus extra in the collector's edition of the album. I think the album was called Apex Predator. Steve's wife did an audiobook version of it, but it has not been sort of widely released yet. It's coming out sometime before the end of the year in light speed. So you get to read the whole thing at that point, if in fact you are still interested after that. So that's pretty much all I've got for you. And we've gotten up to, we're almost up to an hour. So we can either call it a day, or if anybody has any questions or comments, I'm available for a little while.
Any questions? Въпроси? Второ повикване за въпроси? What is the okay? So when you say the story will be published,
I don't. All I know is that they're planning on doing it sometime before the end of the year. If you're not familiar, the URL is lightspeedmagazine.com. I got another story out in there in those with those guys earlier this year called Critical Mass. Totally different story, but anyhow, yeah. As far as I know, it's actually free. You know, at some point it will be free to read on that site, so you don't even have to pay anything, which is kind of nice. I don't know how those guys make any money, but they're apparently one of the more prestigious online science fiction outlets. So yeah, all I can say is it'll be out before the end of the year, but they haven't told me themselves when it's coming out.
Okay, it was just a question from the audience. На lightspeed.com. Накратко го чакаме. Да. Други въпроси? So for the moment, all seats smitten, and I don't see any hands risen. So okay. We have no question in the moment.
Okay, well then I guess we're done here, aren't we?
Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me. Goodbye.